Welcome YouTubers, this is Necro Arcanist XIII in association with Bandit 1569, bringing you yet another double episode in Book 1 of the Necrosis Chronicles, Hell's Crusade. If you have not yet watched chapters 1 through 15, then do so now to avoid spoilers. Previously on Hell's Crusade, the Necros traced Adele to the Young Women's Academy of Silent Hill by thanks of Dragoon Bard Mikey, Cyborg Jack Scion, Draco Omega, and their invention the airship Ragnarok. Upon rescuing Adele, her mother, the succubus Shia, ambushed the party and tells them that she planned to sacrifice baby Adele to summon her master into the mortal realm. After Adele's father, the Archangel Samael, intervened, the powers of light and darkness clashed and broke Adele's soul in half, creating her twin sister Kyra. In order to reunite the two girls, Shia has used her powers of seduction to cause the many historical events that have led to the destruction of Australia, and thus, the formation of the Necro Crusaders Sine Invitarum. Now that her plans have nearly succeeded, Shia plans to sacrifice Adele, Kyra, and 1,000 or so young girls at the academy to please her master. However, the Archdemon and Antichrist Spirin put an end to Shia by summoning Abaddon, Primarch of the Flame, to destroy her body, allowing him to capture her soul with demon magics and throw it into the abyssal nether, where she will be doomed to disintegrate into the stillness of eternity. Now that the coast is clear and the Necros are ready to search for Kyra, this is Hell's Crusade, Chapter 16, My Sister's Keeper, and Chapter 17, Fantasy or Reality. The day after, everybody set out to search for Kyra, but through every method possible, the Necros found nothing. During this search, several months passed without incident. However, one day soon became a joyous occasion, as was the shared birthdays of John and the twin brothers Raziel and Dante. At the house, those who weren't drunk and passed out were playing Guitar Hero on John's new Xbox, which had apparently been rebuilt recently. The players used controllers designed to resemble real guitars. Instead of buttons, there were 5 coloured wires that were pressed down onto a magnetic sensor that would identify what strings were held. In one corner of the room, Dante and Vincent were enjoying a rap battle between themselves despite singing off key. Even though he had to use a dictionary, Vincent proved a surprisingly worthy opponent. In the other corner, Raziel was hiding in the background, even though he was part of the main focus. Adele walked over and leaned against the wall next to him. "Why aren't you enjoying the party?" she asked. "I'm just an antisocial creature," replied Raziel. Adele turned and pointed at Dante and Vincent. "Your brothers are having more fun than you," she said. Raziel looked over and saw that John was interrupting the battle by singing in perfect pitch, which won him the contest, as well as $10 from the two brothers, implying that they had made a bet prior to the battle. "I realise this," said Raziel, "but deep inside, whatever it is that gives people the urge to enjoy themselves like that, it's not a part of my nature. You know that I've never really become blind drunk, engaged in trial of skill, or had just a few laughs just for the fun of it. I've only done it when I felt it was necessary to do so. When I'm injured, the mind-numbing effects of the alcohol ease the pain. When I've seen idiots gloat about their skill, I challenge them to prove them wrong. The most fun I have is to insult Dante when he acts like the idiot he normally is." "But still, it's your 19th birthday," said Adele. "It wouldn't hurt you to play with the boys for a while. I mean, Stan's just passed out, so they're gonna need a bassist." Raziel turned over to the gamers. Mikey was acting as the lead guitarist, and Luke was on drums. Jack, who was the vocalist, also decided to drop out. "Looks like you can join me then," said Raziel. "You've always had a beautiful voice, Adele, almost like an opera singer, but with a clear angelic tone, and almost as eerie as a gothic chorus at the same time." We'll do it together then, said Adele. Your memory helps you sing along as well. Then it's day. The pair went and joined in on the game, just as the Lords of Salem came inside, accompanied by a short red head with large pigtails, wearing a mask shaped like a bird's beak. Okay, listen up, she shouted. Guess who've become a full member of the Lords of Salem? Everybody who was still awake clapped a small round of applause. Archdemon Spearin, who was nearly stumbling over, decided to make a statement, hiccuping between words. Mind me for a minute. For somebody of my stature, I'm a bit of an ironic lightweight. But shouldn't you be called the Ladies of Salem? If there are no blokes, then Lords of Salem makes no sense. The 5 women looked at each other and shrugged. That was a bit of a debate at first, said Chloe, but we decided that even though we have more rights than men, people think we should be seen, not heard. So you thought that if everybody else thought that you were blokes, they'd be more afraid of you, said John. Pretty much. John shrugged indifferently and finished the current bottle before taking one out of Stan's hand, wiping the top of the back of his hand, much to the disgust factor of the girls. Hey, I don't want it to go to waste, said John in his defence. Jack then tapped John on the shoulder. Hey, can you drop me off at the Chancellor? He asked. I got a business meeting in the morning, and I can't have a hangover in this forget session if I'm already there. I thought you quit the CIA, replied John. I said I quit when I find a rookie to replace me. Problem is, nobody in this town has any bloody talent to replace me. Had to ship some promising looking guys in from the mainland. They've been travelling a friggin' week now, so I can't quit on them. You're a cyborg though. You can't get drunk, can you? Alcohol does fuel my engine, but it does still affect the living bits of my brain enough to keep me pissed. Normally the CIA only used the part of the brain that affects memory, but I paid extra to keep all they could save. Fine, then I'll drive you. Zoe suddenly grabbed John's arm. You shouldn't be driving, she said. I actually drive better. I actually drive better drunk, said John. I pay more attention because I know I'm drunk. Besides, I've got a fair bit of tolerance and it filters out quickly. By the time I'm back, I'll be sober. Zoe gave John a quick, anxious glance but eventually let him go, inviting the girls to sit with her at the bar, which was being tended to by Brian. Hey, give me a Bloody Mary, said Sarah. Funny, said Brian. Was that because she was a witch? Actually, I never knew that. I just got hooked on them one night. John and Jack went outside and they were quickly joined by Adele and Dante. Hey, what are you two doing? Asked Jack. I just want to go for a ride, said Dante. I've been inside all day. Me too, said Adele. I think the night air will clear my head a little bit. Whatever, said John. Come on. The four headed into the garage. Where's your boyfriend? Asked Dante. Being outside tonight would suit him better. Well, actually, there he goes, said Adele. She pointed out of the window in the garage door, and Raziel was flying around like a giant bat. He asked me to join him, but I can't see at night, even with the lampposts and military spotlights. The group hopped into the car. Dante lay down in the backmost seat, while Adele lay down in the boot of the car, using a rusted steel pipe to hold the newly installed cover open. John then started to slowly pull out of the garage and headed off. On the way, Dante kept singing, dangling half his body out of the car. Get your head to the bloody window before I roll you up in it, said John. He then turned his attention over to Jack. Guitar Hero and beer, just like the good old days. Jack nodded in response. Last time we played that hard was when the war ended, he said. Think I forgot everything. Well then let me refresh your memory. Hey Adele! Adele was snoring in the boot, and so John shouted. Adele suddenly woke up and she bumped her head on the lid of the boot. Hey, did I ever tell you about the party I had when the war ended? Asked John. No, came the reply. Well, it was exactly like tonight, except you and the boys weren't drunk. Around 10 to midnight we had sirens going off. Before the police had showed up, I went outside hearing the sirens going, Turns out it was goddamn Chuck Norris over here sitting on top of his car with a bloody siren strapped to his head. So I chucked a half-full beer can at his head and he fell off and broke his arm. Jack began laughing. I actually remember doing that, he said, just didn't know when it was. The car was now just outside the Chancellor Hotel. John became worried that he could not pull off parking in such a crowded area due to being drunk himself, but Jack was not worried. I'll just combat roll out into the street, he said. Jack opened the door and dived out with almost no grace, hitting his head on the road. John then made a U-turn and drove past Jack. That was more of a combat belly flop if you ask me, he commented as he drove away. So who's the ginger chick? Asked Dante. John looked back and saw Dante standing up in the back seat, dancing like an idiot. John then pushed a button on the car dashboard that raised the roof, knocking Dante down and trapping his head in the window as it rolled itself up. I bloody told you, he said. Anyway, Reggie was an old friend of ours. Turns out she got hit by a car a few years back. She's only just been released by the hospital. The bloody Empire's taken away her home and all her belongings. So when she ran to the girls just outside, she threw her lot in with us for a show of revenge. John went silent for the rest of the ride home, after which he let Dante out the window and went back inside. The next morning, the first person awake was Raziel, who woke up hanging by his feet from the roof. His struggle woke up Dante, who was somehow stuffed into a large pizza box. Oh, sorry we used you as a piñata, stuttered Dante. What was the point? Asked Raziel. I had no friggin' lollies on me, apart from that M&M I had that was shaped like a square. Oh, yeah, I ate that. Raziel deaf stared his brother. What did you say? He asked. Dante got up in Raziel's face. I ate your goddamn M&M, he yelled. You bastard! I was holding on to that until I could find a display case. Raziel struggled free, and the two began crossing blades, waking up everybody else. The first to respond was Luke. What the fuck? You seeing this, Stan? What the? John pulled a keg off of his head. Not now, boys, he yelled. I got a bloody hangover, and I'm gonna bloody give it to you if you don't shut it. John then put the keg back on his head. It's so quiet in here. Why don't I wear this all the time? Stan noticed this remark. My helmet's quieter, he said. Half of the group began shaking as they woke. In an instant, men began dashing for the bathroom door, slamming into it as Sabafang closed the door behind him. What the hell does a dog need a bathroom for? Called Brian. John began freaking out. You hope to high heaven he did not hear you say that, Brian, he said, for you have more fury than I do. Sabafang broke down the door and began tearing Brian apart by flinging him into the walls with his bare teeth. The others began brawling for control of the bathroom, but Vincent snuck in the door and placed it back on its hinges at the same time. After about an hour of chaos such as this, the entire house was nearly back to normal. Stan picked up the couch, as it had apparently been knocked over during the night, and he found Adele sleeping under it. Yo, wake up, girl, he said, unless you want to be a footrest. Adele yawned and stood up, walking out of the room. Stan then turned the TV on and began flicking through the cartoon channels, stating, boring, 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 until suddenly, a show that was not a cartoon came on, featuring children singing and dancing with a creepy looking figure that was as if James Bond dressed as a clown. The creepiest part was not the multicoloured tuxedo style outfit, which had a Nazi swastika label, as well as several medals sewn to the upper left arm. It was the clown's makeup. He was wearing red mascara and paint around his face that seemed to be running like dripping blood. The children were singing about how great the Empire was because it was, quote unquote, like one big happy family. Everybody's face was covered with disgusted looks. That's just disturbing, said Dante. He makes the Joker from Batman look like me. Stan agreed and turned the TV off. "Hey, hang on," said John. "Turn that back on." "Really?" asked Stan. "Okay." Stan turned the TV back on. Now, the clown was about to read to the children from a blue book. "Now, children," he said, "these are rules about the Empire, and lists all the bad things you should not do. The Emperor becomes sad when you do bad things, and when the Emperor is sad, he makes other people sad. If you want to be happy, then you must do good things to make him happy." "Okay," said John, "I've had fucking enough." Stan turned the TV back off. "Then why the hell do you want to watch it?" he asked. "Because that clown kind of reminded me of Ethan." "Really?" Raziel began to think deeply. "You know, he's kind of right," he said. "Facial features match, voice is nearly the same. However, his hair was yellow, not blonde, but yellow, and the shading was too natural looking to be dyed." Vincent scratched his head and began looking into his little dictionary. "I heard that radiation makes hair turn green," he said. Raziel turned to face Vincent. "You nearly got it," he said. "It's radiation." Raziel turned back to the group, who had puzzled expressions on their faces. "I've been tutoring him on his literacy for the last month," he said. "Before that, Adele taught him to read, and Dante was teaching him to write. He's coming along pretty well. At the rate he's learning, I'd say we will be good enough to go back and finish primary school together in about a week." "You didn't finish primary school?" asked Brooklyn. "None of us did." "That was mostly my fault though," said John. "Before that place was a total fucking death camp. It was just a juvenile hole where the vicious drunks, uncaring monsters and criminals dumped their kids so they could go out with their mates. And not pick them back up until around 10 at night, a week later. I was hoping to get the kids some education, but Vincent was at the very bottom of his teaching standards and he was in the special ed classes. And a lot of them were just getting into fights all the time. Mostly the other kids started it, and so I just stayed outside the school at recess and lunch videotaping all the fights as they happened." "Before you make any smart-ass comments, the principal was a giant pair of douchebags who didn't like me, so he never admitted that my kids were not the problem. Bas tried to fucking sue me when I got him fired for doing drugs in the bathroom stalls. Dan encouraging his 6th grade kid to beat up the kindergartners and steal their belongings to sell on the black market. But I easily outsmarted the lawyer. Never hire a lawyer just because he's Jewish. Anyway, in everybody except Vincent's final year, a massive fight broke out at lunch. Apparently, a kid hated real hard on this girl because her parents were rival gang members. So he torched a new tricycle by dousing it in gas, then chucking a ciggy on it. Anyway, when she went to confront him, he convinced her that Dante done it instead and proved his claim by showing her that he was carrying around one of my lighters. Although in Dante's defense, he stole it from me to burn the cobwebs in the girl's gym bathroom to impress a girl who was arachnophobic. Anyway, the girl got her brother, who was in the 9th grade, to attack the 4 of them. This bloke was a bulky ass bastard, and he went to beat up Dante. The 5 of them started to argue, but then he said something to Adele, and that actually caused Raziel to push him over. Dude went to shiv Raz, Vincent broke his nose. Problem was though, all this dude's mates were in his gang, and they all had weapons. I had to pull the kids out of school the very next day, and shortly after that I began teaching them how to fight. Spearman bowed his head in thought. "Out of concern and curiosity," he said, "what exactly went on in this conversation?" Adele nodded. "I think his name was Ralph," she said, "and he came up to Dante and started coming up with all this gangster slang. So I didn't understand a word of it." "Hang on," said Luke. "I've been in every gang in Queenie that accepts blacks. Before this gang, I was in the Rippers, who were in the weapons trade. Before that, I was in the North Side, who were actually nice blokes if you ignored the fact they killed a priest living in their neighbourhood. Then again, he was an undercover spy for the Warlocks. They actually donated to the African famine by selling handcrafted junkyard art they made with scrap from the tip. Anyway, long story short, I've been in enough gangs and enough undercover operations to figure out every gang's own slang. If you tell me what he said, I can probably translate it. John stopped Luke right there. I've joined the neighbourhood gang for a while in my line of work, he said, as well as being an honorary member of the current local bikie club, the Men of Mayhem. They started out as a fan club for the popular TV show Sons of Anarchy, after the final season aired in Australia. When we still had the Christmas parades, we styled ourselves to look like the actual members from the series. I always played the guy that Marilyn Manson played as a cameo role. At first it was just because I'm a fan of his band, but then the club leader's girlfriend said because I'm Aboriginal, and Manson's character in the show was a white supremacist, it could be also for ironic shits and giggles. Off topic now, I know enough to know what this boy said, and I don't want it spoken in his fucking house. I nearly got shot over a fight with a friggin' rival bikie club from Bernie that featured the same phrase. Anyway, I'll write what he said down, and you translate as best you can in your head. John ripped a sheet of paper from off the coffee table and wrote something down on it. He then passed the note on to Luke, who was instantly shocked. 15-year-old shit said that? He asked. 14 according to Raziel, said John. At recess he was inviting everyone who was not in the rival gang to his birthday that was coming up later that week. Luke cleared his throat and began to translate the paper. Dude, you really need work on your handwriting, he said. Anyway, boy, why the hell did you burn my sister's bike? Stan looked over Luke's shoulder. All that writing means that one sentence? He asked. Damn right. Adele nodded again. I did realise that this was what he was trying to say, she said. So I said that Dante didn't even know his sister, so he had no reason to set her bike on fire. He then called me a bitch, then said I had no right to talk, and that I had no right to be with those freaks. He then went on to tell everybody within earshot that the only reason I was at the school at all was because I was a whore who was most likely going to be caught dead in the street while selling myself for money. The 5 witches were disgusted. He said that? They asked in unison. It's more in my words, but that's the extremely shortened gist of it. John pinched the paper off of Luke and scribbled another note, handing it back to him. Luke's eyes nearly popped out of his head, and he went silent for almost 3 minutes. What the fuck? He said. Damn right, said John. I ordered a grade 9 teacher to give me the name and address of the boy's father just to punch him the fuck out. Then he got his mates to burn me house down. So what was this guy's last name? Maybe I knew him. Well, the teacher said that she didn't know the father's first name, but according to the kid's name on the register, his last name was Kershit. Luke was amazed. You know, this one time I was in the Warlocks. Me and my buddy Jama, we were both framed by a guy called Ralph Kershit for terrorism. This dude got caught out, and we got a good look at his face as God let us out, as he literally got thrown into our cell as we were let out. Jarmuth owes me a solid for when I took a bullet for his girlfriend during a drive-by attack, and last I heard of him a year ago, he got a job at the same prison as a chef, finally put his friggin' lousy cooking skills to good use. He told me that Kershit was back in the same cell on a life sentence, but he was allowed on a parole hearing for good behaviour and he totally buggered it up. I'm going to send my buddy a personal note and something to slip into the bastard's food. I'd tell you to send one of Vincent's socks, said Dante, but that would be way too harsh. John snapped his fingers. I know a girl who works at a hospital, he said. I could persuade her to give up some cancerous medical waste. Luke and John slammed their fists together. Done deal, mate, he said. Now, said Spearin, back to business, the Kyra debate. John snapped his fingers again and pointed at Spearin. Right, nearly forgot. Sorry, Adele. We, henceforth known in the plan as Party N for Necros, have run out of ideas to look for Kyra, henceforth known as Party K for obvious reasons. Thanks to how well her mother, out of respect for Adele's hatred not only of her but usage of the any term that references the fact that they are related, who is now henceforth known as Party B for Bitch Queen. Searches outside the country have been difficult due to the Empire, known as Party A for assholes led by an arse of a ruler, who have tried time and again to shoot down the Ragnarok for being an unregistered aircraft. However, we now have a trump card. The lordly ladies of Salem, known as Party W for witches, have 5 members and so are able to use their powers to their fullest extent. I have researched a spell to scry, which means to magically search using a crystal and a map, for a lost witch. However, I've been experimenting with the spell to create a group of variants, which means that we'll have to scry instead of a witch for a soulless Nephilim. However, the new variant will be more difficult to use due to the fact that scrying requires an entity with a soul, and that locating otherworldly entities alone is a difficult task. So if we go outside, Party W has left their equipment in the garage last night, so we can set it up to cast the spell. What will the neighbours think? Asked Brooklyn. Next thing we know, it's the era of the West Coast witch trials. Already beaten you girls there, said Luke. Only it was a terrorism scam that ended up with nearly 800 men and women killed across Aussie and the neighbouring countries, suspected of being ISIS members. That's actually right, said Raziel. The 2030 trials. They nearly got us because somebody spray painted the ISIS flag on our garage wall. Luckily the hype died down when the court figured out that the one who painted the flag was a priest who's been trying to kill me for years because he's convinced that I'm the Antichrist. You can guess why that is. He kept creeping up and shooting at me with a super soaker filled with water from the baptismal font, and as such I eventually caught pneumonia. They got him arrested on charge of stalking a minor. Why do you have people arrested? Asked Spearin. It makes you look like you were siding with the enemy. I've got no quarrels with the police, replied John. Unlike the military, they don't just cap your ass only to walk away. They only injure, let alone kill, on rare occasions. Not to mention, a friend's dad works at the cop shop, so I've tried to work with them for his sake if the situation calls for it. Although I've never ratted out on me mates just to save my own ass, I've spent a fair few nights in there for refusing to talk. Although you'd happily feed the enemy to the sharks, commented Luke. Right, so to avoid any hassle, we'll move on to the garage. Everybody left the house and proceeded to the garage. While we're at it, said Spearin, we should work on a spell to disguise me as a human, so that I can mingle with the townspeople. Without stopping or looking back, John reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. I got you back, he said. Photocopied that one right at the Necronomicon. I trust you know your Latin? Like Luke knows his slang. Speaking of which, said Luke, I tested that spell out to see if it would make me white. Didn't work properly though. I was trying to remember the prehistoric history lessons from school and I confused Homo sapiens with Homo erectus. You do not want to know how that ended. No, we do not, said Dante. Why the hell do you want to be white? Asked Adele. Well, it sucks to be the only person of colour in this fucking town. Then again, you're the only one of your race in this town, so you probably understand. Raziel tapped Adele on the shoulder. Hey, I've been thinking of something she said. He said. Whatever she said, commented Spearin, it was most likely a lie. Anyway, she said that Kyra was the result of your soul shattering and taking human form. For one, if I were to read your soul, it seems complete. For two, is that even possible? It is actually, said Spearin. One of my pseudo-brethren has the power to split souls in half and recombine them at will. He was a general in Satan's army, and he often used it to overwhelm heaven's outposts by splitting the souls with fallen soldiers into 2 separate entities. That way, only half of the soul perished and the other half lived on. That way, his army was virtually unable to be killed. So it's not like you and Kara are not only twins, said Vincent, but you're kind of like the same person. Weird. I thought American redneck families were screwed up. What? Asked Raziel, Adele, Spearin and Dante in unison. I see a cartoon on TV, said Vincent. Rednecks are supposedly inbred to the point that somehow they're different family members at once. You mean something like being somebody's brother, uncle and cousin all at once? Asked Raziel. I've actually studied this. It's scientifically impossible. They're rednecks, Raz, said Dante. They don't believe in science, so that gives them the right to defy it. You're an idiot. Better an idiot than an inbred redneck. Can't be bothered buying 30-something Father's Day cards every year. You can't even be bothered buying one at all, commented John. Hey, the shop's always run out of stock before I get there. Shut up, let's just concentrate on finding Kara. The Necro set up the Lord's belongings in a similar fashion as to how John remembered the ritual circle back in Salem, using chalk for the points of the star, only he made them twice as big. I just had a thought, said Brooklyn. Why don't we scry for Kara's semi-soul instead? If we have it, we might find a clue as to where the rest of it is. I'd rather you not say it like she's been cut into pieces and we need to find them like a jigsaw, said Adele, but you have a point. I know, said Brooklyn. Whoever says the blondes are dumb needs a good kick in the teeth. Forget that, said John. I can kick a guy's ass hard enough that his teeth fly out from the force of impact. In saying that, God knows what Vincent's capable of. Zoe began interrupting the conversation. Alright girls, let's take our positions. Necros as well, added John. What? Yeah, we're helping. Why the fuck do you think the circle of power's so big? The amount of space we have down here? No. Anyway, I know that this form of pagan shamanism revolves around 5 elements. Fire, water, wind, earth and spirit. So in that sense, Spearin and Raziel, Vincent and Fang, Dante and Bob, Brian and Jack, then Adele and myself will be assisting you in casting the spell. Stan can assist with his Sanglemancy if we need it, but Mike will have to sit this one out. No magical quality. I get Spearin, Vincent, Dante, Brian and you, said Reggie, but what about the other 5? Well, Raziel's magical attacks revolve around a black mist or black flame. Fang uses ice magic which is often tied to water magic, at least as a subcategory. Bob's lightning magic ties in with the air element. Jack was a tough one to figure out, but his cyborg form is metallic and metal is part of the earth, so yeah. And Adele's also a strange choice, being time-based, but I thought that her angelic blood and ties to Kyra would influence the spirit proportion. Seems legitimate, said Chloe. We'll give it a shot. Hang on, said Mikey. I got a way I can help. Ambiance. Mikey began to play a slow, almost gothic tune on his guitar, and John began to shiver. Damn, that's my jam, he said. Good job, Mike. That's creepy, said Sarah. This ritual thing's already becoming some of the creepy shit I've ever seen, said Dante, and I've watched every Marilyn Manson music video ever. Vincent suddenly ripped a workbench from off of the wall in the corner and placed it in the middle of the circle. Everybody took their positions, Stan waiting a distance of Mikey, while everybody stood in the given points. John, Adele and Zoe stood in the white. Spearin, Raziel and Reggie stood in the red. Saberfang, Vincent and Sarah in the blue. Brian, Jack and Chloe in the green. And Luke, Dante and Brooklyn in the yellow. In order to make room, Saberfang had to resort to standing on his hind legs, but he seemed to be doing okay regarding standing unassisted. What are we to do? Asked Zoe. John said nothing, but a strange noise could be heard from Jack's direction. Jack then lifted up his tattered tuxedo to reveal that he had a storage compartment in his abdomen, from which he pulled a map of the world. John then placed an eerily familiar yellow crystal shard on the map. You should know the words to chant for Scrying Lost Witch, he said. Just replace the words Lost Witch with Nephilim's Soul. Seeing as most of us don't know chant, you're not welcome joining with it. However, it's all our jobs to channel our power into our designated witch. John placed his left hand on Zoe's right shoulder. To channel, just focus on allowing your energy to build up inside of you and let it flow through yourself and the girls like a river. They'll do the rest. Just don't focus too much on the river current, otherwise you're going to make one in your pants. Everybody assumed their positions and closed their eyes in deep thought. An eerie Latin chant filled the room, fitting Mikey's ambiance. Slowly, the group's arcana began to glow slightly. Eventually, the witches took hold of their spears and touched the table with the metal tips. The crystal shard began to vibrate, and after a few minutes, it jumped up and began to glow, moving around like a spinning top. Eventually, it shot straight down, piercing a tiny hole in the map over Australia. The chanting stopped and everybody returned to normal. John smiled. It's working. Jack gave us another map. Near instantly, Jack presented another map. John took the shard and the first map of the table so that Jack could place the next map, which was only of Australia without Tasmania. The group then repeated the ritual, but the shard did not actually touch the landmass on the map. Instead, it trailed off between the south and southeast. "Here's hoping," said John. "It's right near us, so either she's in Tassie or somewhere out in the Bass Strait. Jack, map number 3. Jack swapped maps, changing the old Australian for old Tasmanian map, which included the King and Flinders Islands. They performed the ritual one last time, and the crystal shard landed on top of Mount Owen. "Not too far," said John. Then again, that bitch didn't have much time to hide away before our rockin' came a-knockin', though she would have had to have been close by the whole time. The entire group left, except for Adele. Raziel noticed this as she was leaving and turned around. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I was just thinking about what you said about what she said," replied Adele, "about having a split soul but appearing normal." "Is that so?" "Yes. I faithfully believe that the soul is defined by the owner's experiences and it grows as the person develops. That is how our souls differ per every person, so it makes you wonder, are we all born with broken souls? Is life just a quest to replace the missing fragments of our souls with our experiences? You know, Dante is a bit of a jerk, but we do share the same DNA down to a T, so he does have the capacity to do or say something with some form of wisdom. But it's like a superpower that uses up so much energy he has to wait 2 or 3 years for it to recharge. He once said something to me regarding Vincent's low intelligence. He said that he saw Vincent reading a Bible designed for children, you know, so that it had pictures. And over Vincent's shoulder, Dante read the story of Adam and Eve, and he thought of the controversy surrounding the apple from the tree of knowledge. Dante said to me that he believes that humans are born knowing everything, but God only allowed us to live after having our knowledge sealed away in the fruit. Science, which stems from knowledge, defies God. Out of everything surrounding the Catholic religion, there's only one extremely important thing: God is infallible. To prove God wrong is like spitting in the face of existence itself. Mankind's evolution, which became the pursuit of knowledge, is just a deceived race driven by their subconscious to reclaim their stolen birthright. Why haven't animals evolved like we have? They either don't care or they do know everything, but they do not have the linguistic skills with which to tell us. It could have been why the snake gave Eve that apple. The snake knew that God wanted to keep the humans from surpassing him with their unlocked infinite wisdom, so he risked himself to give the gift of knowledge to mankind, and in doing so damned Adam, Eve and himself for defying the God that created him. Dante said all that? Ironically, that was just before he became the selfish, callous being he is today. As if by sharing a forbidden law, he damned himself to have his wisdom taken away. And how does this refer to Vincent? Yes, that is kind of off point. I asked Dante about that, and he said that when God tried to take away Vincent's knowledge so that he could be born, he accidentally took away too much. At that moment, Raziel could sense Dante approaching. "Speaking of the silver-haired devil," he muttered. Dante poked his head around the corner. "Hey lovebirds," he shouted. "You might want to quit this makeout session and make yourselves useful." "Like you know anything about making yourself useful," replied Adele. Dante ran out of the garage, followed by Raziel and Adele. The Ragnarok was now outside with a new deep red and light grey paint job, and everybody else was aboard. Raziel and Adele nearly stumbled over as the plane began to take off without them, so they had to fly after it, and they could hear talking. "Why didn't it work?" asked Sarah. "Damned if I knew how this worked," said John. "I just try to brand people and it either happens or it doesn't. At least you're taking it better than Ethan did. He ran away near crying, and I haven't heard of him since." John noticed Raziel and Adele climbing aboard. "They're on, Jack," he shouted before turning to the pair. What were you doing? Nothing currently important, said Raziel. We just discussed something personal. John appeared to not believe Raziel, but he dropped the subject. Alright. Well now, let's run around the base of the mountain. If there was anything on top of it, the ship's satellites will spot it by now. So the only suggestion would be to run around the rim and look for any tunnels. Hey, there's one now, said Vincent. I see it, it's a big one. The Ragnarok hovered around the side of the mountain, and debris from the college and floating island littered the area. But only just visible behind the rubble, a dark tunnel appeared at ground level. That wasn't there before, said John. I swear there was no tunnel 6 months, not even 6 minutes ago. Scanners show no tunnel, said Mikey on the intercom. Perhaps somebody painted it on as a joke. Spearman peered out of the window. I think I see something else, he muttered. Suddenly, the Ragnarok began to spin around violently. What the hell are you two doing in there? Shouted John. We've got no idea, replied Jack. Both autopilot and manual controls have malfunctioned. Brace yourselves, called Mikey. This is gonna be rough. Everybody ducked under the chairs and prepared as the Ragnarok crashed into the mountainside. Okay, we'll stop here because this is the end of chapter 16. Looking back through some of the previous chapters, I realised I've left some things out during the lore sections at the end, so I'll bring some things up to speed right now. One thing I left out was the design of the Lord's Asylum, as they all wear different masks while attending ceremonies or in battle. For Zoe's masquerade mask, I just thought it'd be cool really. Brooklyn's blindfold hints that her skill with a spear is that good that she doesn't even need to be able to see her enemy to be able to impale him. Sarah's doll-face mask adds an eerier air to the coven, as many horror fans would agree. The number 2 slot in the creepiest things ever in horror movies are dolls, in between little kids as number 1 and bad acting as number 3. Chloe's pharaoh crown is slightly symbolic, as if you reverse the positions of the L and O in Chloe, you get Cleo, as in Cleopatra. And finally, newcomer Reggie has a Plague Doctor mask, which was used, unsuccessfully mind you, during the time of the Black Death to prevent the disease from affecting the doctors as they attempted even more unsuccessfully to treat their patients of the epidemic. With Reggie's bird mask and the affinity of fire, it might be said that her design resembles a phoenix, given that with the addition of a 5th red-headed member, the Lords of Salem are now resurrected to their full powers from the ashes of their previous redhead, Morgan, who was dead. Now, the Ragnarok, cool looking as she may be, is actually based off of the airship of the same name from Final Fantasy VIII. If they are near the end of the game, this dragon-shaped craft allows the player to reach some secret areas, including access to the most powerful enemies and summon creatures of the game. So yeah, it's pretty freaking useful. Now moving on to the chapter we just did, number 16. The part where Raziel and Adele are talking in the garage, when Raziel mentions Dante's fear and how humans are born knowing everything. That actually comes from Dante's inspiration, Sephiroth. In the City of Final Fantasy, or I think the sequel, the City of Duodecim, I got the idea for Dante to say that I stretched Sephiroth's theory to make it not only fit the Bible story of Adam and Eve, but also why Dante's personality contradicts the fact that he started the fear in the first place. Because he's selfish and arrogant and stupid. Now, moving on, there was one point that was made about Isis. When I was actually writing this dialogue, it was during a remaster of the original draft of Hell's Crusade, meaning that I was rewriting the short story I originally wrote for a school project to try and expand the lore and universe into a full-on novel. And around this time was the peak of the terrorist propaganda war centered on ISIS, although I think they're called ISIL now days. I'm not really sure. Anyways, I thought that even though Hell's Crusade and the whole Necrosis Chronicles are set in a kind of modern fantasy setting, I thought it'd be a good idea to make some real-world connections and point out some things currently affecting the modern world, such as terrorism scandals, such as the strings of bombings and shootings that plagued 2015. The statements made about people being killed because of simply being suspected of being ISIS in disguise are actually more common in the real world than you might think. And in more second and third world countries that have higher levels of religious superstition than the others, there are also repeats of the famous Salem witch trials going on today, as per Brooklyn's joke about the West Coast witch trials. Anyways, I'll leave music credits for chapter 16 until the end of this audiobook, so for now please enjoy chapter 17. Adele was the first one awake. Her mind was a scrambled mess of discord. In the distance, she could see the smoking remnants of the Ragnarok, thinking that she was thrown from the crash. The afternoon sun bearing down was almost blinding, and as she tried to sit up, she was too weak to move. Suddenly, she felt something slimy crawling up her arms and legs. She lifted her head up and was horrified to realise that she was face to face with the reanimated corpse of her mother, flesh still dripping on the blackened bones. The jaws opened up, even going as far as splitting in two to try and devour Adele. She tried to run, but she was pinned down, so all she could do was scream. Someone suddenly appeared and kicked the corpse off of Adele, and she looked up to see that it was Luke, who jumped over Adele and slammed his right foot into the zombie's chest, pinning it down. "She must die!" cried the corpse in a horrifically distorted voice. "The master needs her!" "When I send you back to the depths of hell," said Luke, "tell your master I said, 'What's up, man?'" Luke pulled his magnum gun out of his afro and pulled the trigger until the chamber went click, utterly blowing apart the skull and rendering the body lifeless again. In an almost stylish dance-style move, Lucan swooped down and lifted Adele up to her feet by the back and twirled her around himself. "You better watch yourself, girl," he said. "Nearly gone there. You right?" "I guess so," replied Adele. "Why the hell did that bitch come back? I thought Big Red took care of her." "It's a long shot, but I guess that whoever her master was must have used necromancy to reanimate the corpse in one last attempt to kill me." The two of them could hear John yelling in the distance, "Alright, who's not dead? Sound off." Everybody else could be heard moaning as they woke up. "Why don't we ask the Blair Witches and old skeletal face what they make of it?" said Luke. Adele looked down and realised that she was covered in rotting flesh, and she began trying to scrape as much of it off as possible before it caused a stain. She and Luke then ran off to the crash site to see the damage done. Everybody else was inside the ship, leaving Adele to wonder why she was thrown off and not the others. Dante was looking around frantically. "Yo, where's Blood Dracul at?" he asked. Everybody looked around, and as to Raziel was not on board. Adele remembered the spots that she and Raziel were to avoid the crash, and she began moving the broken chairs to reveal a giant hole in the floor big enough to fit both her and Raziel. "Must have gone down to the engine bays," said Mikey. "Well shit," said Luke. "I'll come down. If he's being zapped, I can probably get him out." Adele, Luke and Mikey descended down into the hole. "What the hell could have done this?" asked Luke. "Well, there's your answer, Bob." Adele pointed at a stalagmite jammed into one of the engines. "Must have hit that," said Mikey. "Went through the floor and then snapped off and got stuck in one of the engines." Mikey pointed at a hole in the wall, which was much, much larger. Large enough, in fact, for Spearing to walk through the hole without having to duck under the top of the gap. "The two of you must have fallen through the top," he said, "and you must have rolled out of here. Raziel's not outside, so he must be in here." Suddenly, the Ragnarok rolled over onto its side, throwing everybody around. Spearin barely avoided being crushed, but then Raziel fell onto him from out of nowhere, the impact breaking his horns to around half their original length. Raziel stood up, clutching his head, to show that both of the broken horns were lodged in his side. "Sorry, that," he winced as he pulled the horns out. "My bad." "Don't worry about it," replied Spearin. "I was going to trim them anyway." "You trim your horns?" asked Luke. "Well, they grow rather quickly, so I grind them down with the electric sander once a week." "Well, anyway, Red, if you threw that sexy demoness's soul into a death dimension, why the fuck did she attack Adele just now?" Spearin pointed to the gap in the wall and jumped through it. "Probably wants Dad's advice," said Raziel. The three of them reunited with the rest of the group. "She come back, did she?" asked Zoe. "I'd like to put that bitch down permanently." "Beat you to it already, girl," said Luke. "I seen less brains splattered all over the ground when I first used me gun to take on a rival gang." "I thought it was necromancy," said John. "I was suggesting that possibility," added Adele. "What if the master was so desperately out to get me that he used necromancy to animate her corpse for one last attempt? The only question about that now is, what if the master finds someone else to take her place? Something with far more power and intellect." "If this master is that desperate," replied John, "he'd have the testicular capacity to show himself." "She has said that he is trapped," reminded Spearin, "and he requires a soul to set him free. I doubt the master can actually try to assault us directly just to get Adele, so it would have to send a minion." John thought deeply on that statement. "We can't be too sure about that," he said. "For now, our efforts have to be focused on Kyra. We shouldn't be worried about demonic mercenaries until, well, one shows up. And if one shows up, it shows up, and we put it down. Now, who's not too injured to join me on the search?" Raziel, Dante, Adele, Zoe, and Brooklyn all sided with John. "Hey Bobby, you should be right," called John. "I am," replied Luke, "but it might be an idea if the rest of us stay back here and lick our wounds for a few minutes. Besides, if the path splits, Scout Party can mark the way you're going and we can go on the other way." "Slightly cowardly thinking, but it's actually not that bad a plan. Alright, we'll do it your way." The group went their separate paths, Dante leading the way amongst the rubble in search for the cave entrance, bouncing off the stone and brick pillars. "That entrance should be around here somewhere," said John. "I know I saw it around here somewhere." Dante stopped jumping around and attempted to lean onto a rock to catch his breath. Out of nowhere, the rock buzzed like static and Dante fell through it. The rock disappeared, revealing the cave. "Illusion spell," said John. "No wonder we couldn't see it up close. It's designed to protect whatever's inside." Everybody ran over to inspect the cave entrance. "So dark," said Adele. Dante suddenly crept up behind Adele and clapped his hands just behind her head. In shock, she made no noise, but her wings shot out and nearly hit Brooklyn. Adele then turned around and grabbed Dante by the collar, then turned back to the cave and dropped him to the ground before kicking him into the blackness. "You don't often open your wings when you're scared, Adele," stated Raziel. "Only if I hold in a scream," replied Adele. "It's kind of like a subconscious go-to." "We've gotten some good out of it though," said John. "We've got a light source." "But," said Raziel, "is it safe to enter?" Raziel stepped up to the very entrance and tapped on the wall. "Are you alright in there, Dante?" he asked. Silence seemed to follow for about a minute before Dante finally gave a response. "It really stinks in here." John looked around. "I thought that was just me," he said. "It does smell like you," said Raziel. "Oh hey, check it out." John pointed at a crack in the wall. He reached in and ripped out a small mushroom. "These little buggers," he said. "Ironically, there's some kind of cologne that only works on people allergic to them. If someone's wearing them and has a reaction, it actually overrides to where its normal scent like a perfume. And the smell differs between age and gender. For someone like Adele, for example, it smells like apples. Or me, I don't know what it is, but I like it." "That's your young man musk?" asked Dante, who was now hanging in the entranceway. "I thought it was your old man stink." "Maybe if you got out, the smell would go away." "Oh, ha ha. Serious though, any perfume you like, whatever the fuck you're wearing, is gonna make it worse." So is there any side effect to this? Asked Zoe. Well, if you wear it and fall asleep, it becomes a hallucinogen and fucks your mind up. Then again, that might just be me. But it definitely ain't gonna help you sleep. John quickly tucked the mushroom into his pocket. Gonna save this for later. Anyway, let's just go on, said Adele. Kyra awaits us. The group disappeared into the cave, saved from any dangers by Adele's illumination. I'm surprised at how well my wings work as lighting, commented Adele. Talk about a girl who lights up the room, said Dante. I'd say we could see the end of this bloody tunnel if it weren't curved, added John. Suddenly, a small quake rocked the ground. Bloody hell, exclaimed Dante. What the hell did Vincent eat? He's not even here, said Raziel. And we don't talk behind your back. Suddenly John's phone began to ring. Yo, he said. Hey, it's Bob, came the reply. We're about to run in after you and the cave collapsed. Vincent's trying to clear it, but his arm's in a sling. Alright, keep him calm, everyone's alright in here. The cave's splitting up like I thought, so we're gonna stay here for a moment and try to figure out how to move on. We only got one light source and we can't cut it down in half. Right mate, see you later. As John hung up, Dante noticed something on the wall. Hey Adele, tilt yourself a tiny bit to the right, he said. Why's that? Asked Adele. I'm trying to look at this picture on the wall. Picture? Asked John. John stood next to Dante and inspected the picture. It's Aborigine artwork, he said. They didn't have scripted language, so they used pictures to tell stories. What's this story then? Asked Raziel. I hope it's one about the first Tassie tiger, said Dante. That one's my favourite. John gave Dante a disappointed glare, then he went back to the artworks, giving Adele instructions as to where to shine her backlight. This went on for over half an hour before John reached the end. What does it say? Asked Zoe. From what I can tell, said John, the story goes along the lines of... Raziel suddenly interrupted John. In these times of moonrise, men with skin white like clouds in the sky sailed on giant houses in the sea. They brought fire wands and tamed animals that looked like the wild dingoes, as well as stranger creatures no tribe has ever seen. Some were large and the white men sat on their backs to move fast like the winds. Others were small and ate the herbs and grasses that we and the wild animals ate. The white men decided to take our land away from us, hunt our animals to death so that we had no food. They killed our warriors who tried to defend our tribes, and they built large homes out of wood and stone. As to tell what has become of our people, I bear a message to those of my tribe who escaped the evils of the white man and their power to take over the land and the sea. They kill our men, they take our women and children and work for them. Among the white men, there were a number of them who take the women and children to do terrible things to them. I have seen what they do, and even if I knew how to say it, I cannot bring myself to say what evil it is. Just know, beware the free of all sight. I have learned the white man's words, and written them in their language for all to know. The free of all sight? Asked Brooklyn. I cannot tell what it is, said Raziel. The part of the world that is supposed to give the name has been destroyed. What icon did they use for this group? Asked John. It's multiple symbols, replied Raziel. There are 3 straight lines and a picture of a person holding them over his hand. What makes it unique is that this person is depicted with an eyeball for a head. An eye? Asked Dante. Yeah. Jordan suddenly pushed Raziel aside. Let me see, he said. 3 lines, and then eye. John began to shiver with unease. Oh no, that can't be. What is it? Asked Adele. Well, Brooke and Zoe will understand. John took his combat knife out of his belt and carved a symbol in the wall, consisting of a triangle with an eye in the middle. Both witches gasped in shock. The Illuminati, said John, first known as the Freemasons. They're an underground shadow society who control most of the world's leading powers, such as who was the American president, who won what wars, what religions had power, which celebrities were famous, etc, etc, etc. They were well known for top secret information that almost nobody else can safely know. So whatever is meant by doing evil things to people can't be good. Although my all-seeing eye for conspiracy theorism, no pun intended, points towards bioweaponry experimentation. Dante began pointing out something on another wall. "Hey, I think there's more to this," he said, "but there's vines covering it." Dante jumped up and cut down the vines, allowing John and Raziel to figure out what else was recorded. "This seems to be somebody else's work," said Raziel. "This may be after the first one, as it also includes English words, probably for the terms that the Aborigines didn't have." John began reading the paintings. "I am the last of my tribe. The writings that take place before this mention the Three of Osight, whose true name written in the white man's language is the Illuminati, have been doing evil things to captive prisoners. Women and children are subjected to torture. The white man uses needles filled with liquid to change the prisoners, who they call subjects. The white man says that captives are being turned into what they call bioweapons, but I do not know what this is. However, I have seen a man stab my sister with a green needle. Her skin started to bubble like the white mist that grows on the ocean water. And then the man took her to a place, a short walk from my prison. Inside, it looked like there were many people like her, but their bodies were joined together to create one giant monster." John pointed out an octopus-shaped figure painted in red. "I called this creature the Wall of Demons, as only the dark spirits who wish to hurt our people would want to create such a beast. I escaped and returned to my village only to see that the Wall of Demons was there, and it devoured the white man and those of my tribe alike. It started to grow, as if those it ate were joined to it like my sister was. It was as if the meat was liquid, and pieces of bones could be seen flowing inside of it like a river. It did not seem to like the sunlight, so it ran away. I hid from the white man in this cave, but now I hear it screaming as I hide. I fear I have entered its lair, and now I will become one with it. Beware the Wall of Demons. Run outside if you can. I would prefer to be killed by the white man before becoming a demon inside this cursed mountain." At that moment, a scream that boiled, curdled, and froze the blood at the same time echoed throughout the cave system. Raziel immediately began looking around him, apparently using his true sight. He eventually stopped at a wall and slowly tracked towards the pathway that the group had entered the room from. "Holy Mary, Mother of Christ, it's a big one," he said. Suddenly, within Adele's light, a mass of skin and flesh, blood and bone came barreling down the path, shooting out globs of its own flesh at the ground to pull itself forward. John was the most shocked person of all. "Now kids, I know you've never heard me say this," he said, "but let's get the fuck out of here." John sped off in the opposite direction as fast as he could. Everybody else except for Dante followed suit. Instead, Dante drew his sword and prepared to fight. John suddenly raced back in and grabbed Dante by the leg, only just beating the demon wall to it, and dragged him off kicking and screaming. "Hey, let me at it," said Dante. "I'll feed you to it if you don't stop kicking me," replied John. As the group ran, the demon wall seemed to be getting closer. Dante could see inside the beast's giant mouth. The half-rotten corpses of its more recent victims acted as a tongue that threatened to grab him and drag him down to hell. "On second thoughts," said Dante, "discretion is the better part of valor." "Good to hear it," replied John, as he tossed Dante over his head, throwing him far ahead amidst the others. John trailed behind intentionally, throwing random spells, including the universe-sundering apocalypse and destructive gigagraviton. However, they had almost no effect. "Damn it, it's like Gilgamesh all over again." The demon wall suddenly shot out a massive, thick tendril of its own body at John, who narrowly avoided it. 3 more shot out of the beast's mouth, and John was dodging them with an unusual grace. John jumped over the last tongue like a hurdle and caught up with the others. "Did you take ballet lessons or something?" asked Dante. "No, I'm just trying not to get fucking eaten," replied John. The wall was bearing down, poised to strike. It shot out 2 massive tongues. A decomposing hand emerged out of one and latched onto Dante's hair, bringing him down to the ground and dragging him towards it with its horrific scream. The second tongue split open to reveal a set of teeth, and it grabbed onto Adele's left leg, dragging her away. Raziel came to a stop, skidding across the ground to make a small pile of dirt that he kicked off and gave him momentum. As he came running, Dante and Adele reached out to Raziel, but he ignored the two and jumped up to the roof of the cave, kicking off of a loose rock. The rock fell onto the beast's head, stunning it long enough to let Dante go and forcing the first tongue to retract, but the second tongue was more persistent, greedily clinging on with a disgusting slurping noise. The roof of the cave over the wall suddenly collapsed onto the outstretched tongue, completely preventing the wall from coming any closer. However, the tongue was still unrelenting, and it continued to hold on to its squirming, screaming prey. As Adele kicked and screamed with severe pain, everybody tried to cut off the tongue with his or her weapon, but to no avail. Raziel conjured a massive orb of black flame in his hands, and he grabbed onto the slimy worm with all his might. The tongue ripped a large chunk out of Adele's leg, causing her to scream out in an even more blood-curdling tone than the wall's cries, as the seemingly melted skin, blood and sinews stretched out between the tongue and the wound it made before Adele fainted in shock. The light from her wings quickly lowered to a dim ember, and it was at that point that Raziel's fire took effect, burning through the leech's flesh until the entire thing was incinerated. The beast on the other side roared in pain and hatred, having been denied its meal. John shook Adele in an attempt to wake her up. She only barely opened her eyes and began to sob quietly. Dante began walking around, but in the blackness, he literally walked into a dead end. "No freaking good," he said. "We're trapped there forever, like anything wind sits on." Trembling from the pain, Adele felt down her leg until she reached where she was bitten, snatching her hand away and jerking violently the instant she touched it. "We're gonna need your light, Adele," said Zoe. "We can't help you if we can't see the wound." Dante pressed his ear against the wall. "I think I can hear birds," he said. "I think we can knock the wall down here. Then we can go outside." Dante stepped back and plunged his sword into the wall. He then took the blade out, but no light shone through. What the hell? Dante peered through the crack he made, but there was another tunnel behind it that had light peeking through a slightly large crack. "We can break through here," said Dante. Then another wall, then went out. John stood up and barged through the wall as if it were paper. Raziel picked up Adele and the group began walking out. Suddenly, the wall burst through the barricade behind them, collapsing the entire cave further. The main group made it outside, but Dante was still trapped. "Shit!" he cried. "Shit, shit, 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 shit." John ran over to the wall and tried to tear it down, but half of the rocks would not budge. "There's a tunnel down this way," called Dante. "I'll try to..." Dante's voice faded immediately as the beast roared. The Ragnarok, barely repaired to the point of functional status, soared overhead and fired a laser beam that disintegrated the rocks. There was no sign of Dante or the wall of demons inside, but the pathway that Dante was speaking of was now blocked. "I've got to fucking go after him," said John. "He's an arrogant little shit, but it's my job as a father." Brooklyn scoffed quietly. "Hey, I always look out for my family no matter what. You can go to the hospital and see a group of people with flattened heads who try to say otherwise." "Is violence your only solution?" asked Zoe. John responded by punching at the wall beside him to open up a new section of tunnel. "There is a time and place for it," he said, running into the empty blackness shortly after. As the Ragnarok landed, Raziel began to tend to Adele's wounds. The beast had apparently not taken a bite, but it had secreted some sort of acidic saliva that slowly corroded its way through Adele's flesh until it gave way, setting her loose. Already, the wound had become infected. The skin was grey and dying, and the muscles were already dead. Adele slowly started to whisper out to Raziel, calling his name. Raziel kneeled down and held her right hand in both of his, hanging his head in a mournful expression. "If only you didn't suffer this curse," he said. "If only you were not born to be the darkness's victim." Adele reached up with her left arm and brushed some dirt off of Raziel's face. "It's not your fault," she said. Raziel looked into Adele's eyes, which were full of fear and suffering. "You have to go. Dante needs you." "I can't leave you," replied Raziel. "Not like this." Adele gave a weak chuckle. "You're so stubborn when someone is hurt." That's your worst for Raziel, he needs you. I've got the girls with me and the others are on the way. I'll be fine for now. Really. Raziel bowed his head ever so slightly lower, as if he were nodding slowly. He reached up and ripped the bandages off of his face before tying them around Adele's leg, visibly burning with intensity through the hair covering it. Adele could see in his left eye the passion that drove him, the powerful desire of his defensive attitude. If John can fight his way through a doomsday machine with injuries that will kill a man from the intense pain, continued Adele, then perhaps I must take his example and fight through this. Adele cringed as she sat up straight, face to face with Raziel. I'll see what can be done about my leg, then we'll come to join you. He's always said we should stand together. Raziel nodded, kissed Adele goodbye before running off into the darkness, leaving her in the care of the Necros as he ran to save his twin from a fate far worse than eternal condemnation. And that was chapter 17. We've seen some Aborigine artworks, we've learned a little about the Illuminati, and Adele was nearly eaten by a gigantic living blob of flesh. The point of the Illuminati creating the wall is because nobody actually truly knows who the Illuminati are or just what they do, apart from actual members such as Walt Disney. So the fact that they had technology 200 years more advanced than what the rest of the world had is somewhat possible. And the fact that they used it to create a living bioorganic weapon is not surprising, given that it's something that people have been trying to do for over half a millennium. Just look at Resident Evil. Now, I know that I'm doing these double episode chapters more often, but compared to my later books, remember that I'm currently writing the 4th one in the whole series. The chapters in Hell's Crusade are relatively short, so I'm trying to squeeze as much time out of them as I can to try and reduce the number of overall chapters. By the way, we're officially halfway through Hell's Crusade now, as after this there's only 16 more chapters left to go. Before I go, music credits. Chapter 16 Intro, To Live Is To Die by Metallica plays, fitting for playing Guitar Hero on someone's birthday, am I right? During the car ride, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata plays, returning from the very early chapters. The next morning, the main theme of Final Fantasy VII plays, and it continues on until the scrying ritual, from which Yanni76's Diary of Undertaker, downloaded from Newgrounds, plays until the end. Chapter 17 Intro, First Winter Snow by Karthon plays. Another song that I downloaded from Newgrounds. I think it fits because, while not officially stated, as far as I can remember, this time period in Hell's Crusade actually takes place around early winter, when it's just cold enough for it to start snowing. It doesn't actually snow often down here in Tasmania, but it does every now and again. When John's group reaches the cave, Grim Reaper Lullaby by Coxukr returns. Remember, that's another Newgrounds song, there's a lot of these. When the group discovers the cave paintings and learns the terrible secret behind them, Beyond the Wasteland from Final Fantasy VII Advent Children returns. When the Wall of Demons appears and during the chase scene, Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden plays. Fitting because it's about the Native Americans being run off their land by British colonists, just like the Aborigines and the British colonists. Not to mention, if you're being chased by a living pile of human flesh, whose sole desire is to devour everything in its path, you don't want to run to the hills yourself. And during the outro, when Dante is separated from the group, Clockwork Little Happiness from Silent Hill 3 plays. Next time on Hell's Crusade, as Dante finds himself in a very peculiar situation, and the rest of the Necros must try and find him before it is too late. All the while, the secrets behind the mysterious place Dante winds up harbours a terrible secret. This is Necro Arcanist XIII in association with Banner 1569, Signing off. Stay classy, YouTube.